Let me brief you regarding the unicorns in India. The latest number of unicorns in India is 116 as of August 2024. A study of the rise and decline of Indian unicorns is definitely fascinating. And this session will indulge the audience on what makes a unicorn succeed and stay in the business longer, and the factors that contribute to their decline or even the demise. The story of Byju's will be exciting for our audience to engage with. Without any further delay, let me take this opportunity to invite our guests for the next session onto the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, with a great round of applause, may I invite Mr. Pradip K. Saha, Professor Dhruv Nath, and Ms. Stuthi Vijayaraghavan onto the dais. Please do join us on the dais, everyone. A venture studio for the built environment. She worked with McKinsey in the US, failed at a low-cost housing venture, and excited a sustainability home tech one. Stuthi has traveled to 75 plus countries and can get by in 7 different languages. She is a proud signatory of Living My Promise, a pledge to give away at least 50% of wealth to charity. Thank you, Stuthi, for joining us. May I also give you a brief on the guest sitting with us right here on the dais. Mr. Dhruv Nath, as you can see, is the author of the EARNICORNS, Stories of Rare Profitable Unicorns. We also have Mr. Pradip K. Saha with us, who's the author of The Learning Trap, How Byju Took Indian Edtech for a Ride. And without any further delay, we would be commencing with the book launch of The Learning Trap, The Byju Took the Indian Edtech for a Ride. Let me take this opportunity to invite our guests on the dais for the book launch. In this very special occasion, we have a special guest who will be joining us, Mr. Rishikesha Krishnan. I request Mr. Rishikesha Krishnan to kindly join us on the dais. He is the director at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Can we have a huge round of applause for this gentleman here? The book launch of The Learning Trap, How Byju Took Indian Edtech for a Ride. Sir, I request you to remain on the dais. We also have another book launch for this segment. I would like to announce the book launch of the second book for this session. And yes, with a huge round of applause, let me invite Mr. Dhruv Nath. Please do come forward. The EARNICORNS by Dhruv Nath is being launched at the moment. Everyone, can we have a huge round of applause for this book? Please do pose for a group photograph. I would like to give it to the host for this specific session, Unravelling the Indian Unicorns. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Wonderful to be here today. I've got 2 names for my authors on the panel today. I'm going to kind of refer to Pradip as the takedown king of shady startups. And he's going to be the new Namkaran, right? Because till now, profitable unicorns were called cockroaches, and suddenly they have a cool name, EARNICORNS, right? So, we just heard some of the statistics about unicorns in India, 350 billion valuation. But I'm really delighted to have both of them here today because two vastly differing narratives, two well-researched narratives, and really stories that both writers of business journalism in India as well as budding startup founders can really learn a lot from. So fantastic to have you both here. And I'm going to start, because this is a session on startups and unicorns, 60-second elevator pitch each, and we're going to hold you to the 60 seconds. Tell us about your book. Pradip, your time starts now.
Well, I hope all of you know Byju. It's like next door to all of you guys. So when I started covering Byju's back in the day, and I started writing on the company starting 2020, my first story on Byju's was in March 2020. The idea was to cover education technology because education technology was the sunrise sector. A lot of money was coming in. And we were like, okay, this company is doing something remarkable, something remarkably different. It's talking about learning. None of us knew what learning was before Shah Rukh Khan pitched it to us. So we wanted to figure out what the company was doing. Obviously, it was raising millions and millions in venture capital. We wanted to see where the money was going. And if the money was going, was it going in the right direction? Was it actually bringing any results? And when I say results, it is not about the founder buying a new Lamborghini. It's about the student who is actually buying that product, benefiting, if at all, from that product, which is called learning outcomes. We were trying to figure that out. One thing led to another. We uncovered a lot of things, and most of those things are also covered in my stories for the morning context, for which I write. The learning trap is basically has come from reporting on the company for my publication. So the book is about the rise and fall of Byju's, that was once a $22 billion valuation company, which is hovering around near zero right now.
Thank you, Pradip. Dhruv, your 60 seconds.
So first of all, you must remember I'm an ex-professor, and to us, time means nothing. Let me be very clear. So 60 seconds, you can keep counting, I don't care. Okay, just to give you a little background, when the internet came in, and I'm talking of the late 90s, right, when many of you were not born, something very interesting happened. There is a term that we used. We said geography has become history. Okay? Why? Very simple. Because before the internet came in, your customers typically were local. Once the internet came in, you could be sitting in Kashmir and your customers could be in Kerala or Tamil Nadu or anywhere, right? Which means the opportunity to grow was much, much more. Number one. Number two, as you grow, right, the brand builds up, word of mouth builds up, and economies of scale start kicking in, all right? So therefore, all these companies which were internet-based, and they were all startups at that time, they said, let us grow. Let's grow like very crazy, okay? And they continued to grow. And in the process, what happened was, the ones who grew rapidly, they kept growing, they survived, and the ones who grew more slowly, they died, all right? And you can see that in, you can see that in food delivery, there are just 2 guys left. You can see that in e-commerce, there are just 3 or 4 guys left. You can see that in travel, there are just about 4 or 5 guys left. So this is what happened, grow. Unfortunately, it was grow at any cost. And that cost was at a loss, right? Investors, by the way, were very happy. They said, wow, this is the next big thing. We will invest in these companies. You're growing 100%? Wonderful. Your losses are growing 150%. No problem. 100% growth, hai na? We will invest in you. So even the investors started chasing growth at any cost on the assumption that once they became dominant, they would somehow magically make a profit. So that is what happened in our industry. Fortunately, there were a few guys who said, no, we will run genuine businesses. And you know, by the way, many of these loss-making companies, they became unicorns. But unicorn is a mythical animal. It doesn't exist. Similarly, these companies didn't exist. The moment you withdraw funding, they're gone, they're dead. So, a few guys, and I picked up 4 of these guys. There is Naukri, which is InfoEdge. There is Zerodha, which is your own city. There is Dream 11, Ab Dream 11 pe team bana lo. And there is Zoho, which is the software company. All these 4, almost from the beginning, have been profitable. They are unicorns, and therefore, I tried to coin a term for this. They are unicorns that earn money. Therefore, they are earnicons. And by the time your grandchildren are grown up, hopefully this term will become a little well known. And maybe my grandchildren at that time will be happy.
Fantastic start. Thank you both so much. But, you know, taking up a little of what Dhruv said, that, you know, that was the narrative, right? You will raise more money. At some point, you will become profitable. At some point, all of this will multiply. And I hear you, Pradip, like when I first started reading about Byju's, this was an inspiration. This was a guy who taught on the ground. You've told that story from the beginnings of Byju's. They kind of started differentiating learning versus rote. And then the story evolved, and you were, I think, the first journalist who started picking up the threads of, kuch theek nahi hai, dal mein kuch kala hai, right? And of course, now we are getting to a point of, is this insolvency? What does that mean? Tell us a little about your journey in these 4 years, tracking this story, and how you know, kind of your mind picked up these cues and data, and what happened.
And the threats you've received.
It's not easy because startup journalism, as we see, and with all due respect to everybody who write, is more about celebrating fundraisers. And you go out, you talk to journalists, you talk to publications, they will all tell you the same thing. Startup journalism, when I started journalism, even now, is all about what company raised what money at what valuation. Their business metrics, their revenue streams, the health of the business, the balance sheets, the growth, profits, nothing matters. So yeah, in a world like that, when narratives are defined by the money raised by a company, it's very difficult to figure out the real story behind the money. Also, you have to remember that, you know, the people who are paying this money, who are investing this kind of amount into these companies, they are powerful people, right? And there's something called access journalism. We call it access journalism. When they are raising money, and as a journalist, when you go to them to interview people, they will give you interviews because they want to talk about growth, they want to talk about what they are doing, they want to, you know. But the same people, when you want to ask them, where did the money go? You know, you raised 100 rupees for this purpose. It is still not there. What did happen? You will find that they are shutting doors on you. So that's the first difficulty. It's difficult to pick up stories. It's difficult to find people who want to talk to you about, because you have to understand a lot of inside stories come from people who work in these companies. I don't know how many of you have read The Learning Trap. I suggest you do. I have spoken to hundreds of people who have, in utmost confidentiality, given me the information that they have, putting their lives, their jobs, their livelihoods on the risk. And I appreciate it, and I dedicated this book to them because obviously it is very important to bring out these stories, because wherever there are things that are not going as per the plan or as promised, should come out. But I'm just trying to tell you how difficult it is from the journalist's point of view. Also, the toxicity at the workplace. By now, all of you have seen the news reports and you all know what is happening in Byju's. once you are, you must have seen movies, right? Character actors, you know, Heath Ledger died because he played the Joker. Something similar happens to us journalists who track a story for a longer period of time. You become part of the story. And the toxicity at that particular company or that particular story that you're tracking takes a toll on you. It's like secondhand smoke. It sent me into therapy. Because obviously a lot of things happened which are all detailed in the book. So it takes a toll. You tend to question yourself a lot that, you know, X number of people are losing jobs. Is this because of my reporting? And then you have to come back to the terms that it's not your reporting, but it is the fundamentals of this, of the company. So a lot of these things play in your head all the time, continuously, 24/7, without a break. And of course, there are threats. So there are veiled threats.
We are going to come back to that.
Yeah.
I think
They are called soparis, by the way.
Yeah. Dhruv, want to take a little bit of what Pradip said and said, you know, you've developed a framework which you've kind of analyzed these EARNICORNS by and added 2 bits to it, right? Trying to understand what is it that, you know, if you had to say not the whole framework, but your top thoughts on what was different about these 4 that they didn't get caught up in the story of the unicorn, the, you know, we will make money one day, or buying that Lamborghini as the founder becomes the goal rather than the business you're building. What was the difference?
Okay. I'll try and cut it short.
Yeah.
So first of all, these founders, they were not just 4 founders, they had co-founders as well. The starting point was very, 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 very simple. We will be profitable, come what may. We will not follow the, you know what Pradip just described, the Byju's approach. We will not chase valuations, we will chase the business. We have to be viable. Therefore, they translated that into we will run a frugal business. And all of them, without exception, ran a frugal business. 2 more things which were common, and there were some things which were very different. They were insanely focused on the customer. In fact, Nitin Kamath from Zerodha, which is one of the stories I've written, he said very clearly, I don't believe in marketing. If I give my customer a wonderful product, the customer is happy. He comes back, he will bring in more customers with him. I don't need to market, right? And that's a frugal business. And the 4th common thing is, all these guys were very, very focused on their teams. They really looked after their teams. And if you'll, Stuthi is glaring at me, but can I tell a story? Little story? Okay. Just look in the other direction. So I'll give you a story from Dream 11. Okay, all of you know Dream 11, right? It's fantasy sports, right? Aap Dream 11 pe team bana lo. Has anybody been to their office? They have only one office, and that's in Bombay. Has anybody here been to their office? No one? Okay. So it's in BKC, Bandra Kurla complex, very posh locality. And they don't call it a office, they call it a stadium. Okay, and let me explain why. When they take in people, so let's say they want programmers, it's a tech company, so they will need programmers, right? They do not, I will repeat, they do not recruit programmers. They recruit passionate guys, people who are passionate about sports, and they're also programmers. Okay, so that's number 1, which means these guys actually will not get any opportunity anywhere else till there is somebody equivalent to Team 11, right? Number 2, who the hell, which sportsman walks into an office? No way. So it's a stadium. You walk into the stadium, and I've been there a couple of times to meet Harsh Jain, who's the founder. When you walk into the reception, there is a small football field that you're standing on, chota football field. On one end is a goal post, and there are sofas under the goal post, which means if you're waiting for these guys, you will sit in the goal post, right? When you walk into the office, the entire place, see, normally a corporate office will be covered with what? Italian marble, wall-to-wall carpeting, wooden flooring. These guys have AstroTurf. You know what AstroTurf is, right? Hockey. And everything there is sports oriented. You got baseball bats hanging, you got cricket bats hanging, you got basketball. So people are very happy. The kind of people they've taken, they're very happy. Number one. Number two, during COVID, just imagine what happened. During COVID, you know, all sports stopped. You couldn't go out, right? And when all sports stop, fantasy sports, which is on top of physical sports, also stops, which means their revenues were down to absolute zero. Okay? Fortunately, they were profitable. When internet companies, when their revenue comes down to almost zero, they're facing bad times, what is the first thing they do? And he will tell you they start laying off people en masse. 500, no problem. 500, 1000, no problem. Plus we will take Messi as a brand ambassador, right? Anyway, that's beside the point. These guys did not have a single mass layoff, not even one. You know what they said? They said, in good times, you have looked after the company. Now in bad times, the company will look after you. Okay? So they really look after their people. People don't leave. You know, in internet companies, can anybody guess what the typical manpower turnover per year is? Sorry? 25, can be 50, can be 100. These guys have a manpower turnover of 4%. Internet company, I mean, it's unbelievable. People don't leave. And when people don't leave, you don't need to recruit. You don't need to retrain new guys who are coming in. They are very highly productive. They're very highly motivated. Costs are low. Productivity is high. Profitable company, right? So, great example of how looking after your people and taking the right people has made you profitable. But profitability wasn't the aim. This guy actually believed in looking after his people.
You know, great set of points. And I love it. Like one of the co-founders of Naukri, Hitesh, is my batchmate. So this is, everything we've heard from him has also been, you know, I think when they were going public and everyone, Hitesh Oberoi is my batchmate.
I have ragged him. He's my junior from IIT Delhi. I've ragged him.
So, you know, very grounded, but in a sense it feels like the Indian startup ecosystem is still not mature. If we think the founders and the way they think and they behave are the constraining, you know, kind of boundary walls, and what's happening with the accountants, the lawyers, the regulators, the VCs, and what is the role they need to be, you know, to play the checks and balances. Because both these stories are very founder focused. 4 here, 1 here, it's about the founder, it's about their personality, fantastic. But this is 25, 30 years in, right? This is not year 5 of the startup ecosystem. So what did you all feel, both of you all, question to both of you all, on the failure of the ecosystem, right, which is supposed to be the check and balance? What are your thoughts on that?
You mean the VCs and...
VCs, regulators, accountants, the, you know, lawyers. I think the accountants have now been resigning, right?
Yeah, so
etc.
there's a famous term, right? Success has many fathers, failure is an orphan. So, you know, when you're succeeding, when you're bringing in money, it's in everybody's interest to just look the other way. And I was just telling you that the entire VC ecosystem works on the greater fool theory. So you invest in a company.
I am almost a VC.
But still, yeah, I'll stick to my point. Yeah. So you invest in a company and then you always want to find the next person who will buy that company at a higher valuation so you can get an exit. So you invest 10 rupees into a company at 100 rupees valuation, you get 10%. Now you will want somebody to value that company at 150 rupees so that your valuation from 10 becomes 15, the amount that you invested. So that is how it works, right? And for good companies, for bad companies, I mean, it actually is clear after some time, after some years, but initially nobody knows. Some businesses are fundamentally wrong, but most of these businesses like Byju wasn't wrong. It wasn't a wrong business to begin with. But unfortunately, it fell into a trap of multiple things which led to the decline. But that's the point, right? Till 2 years ago, they were highlighting every event across the world. And they were bringing in money. And till the time there was money, nobody wanted to say anything. And I asked I asked these guys, I asked the auditors all the time, why were you silent all the time? And somebody higher up at Deloitte told me that, you know, they gave us a very, very hard time. And I was like, but why did you not oppose? Why did you sign the audited earnings? Who was stopping you? You don't have any answers. You don't have accountability.
Yeah.
There's nobody there right now.
Dhruv, you've seen the Q&A sign, so sorry, but this is really a minute now. What do you think the failure in the system is?
I think the biggest failure is the fact that valuations have been glamorized, right? Have you raised a Series A? Oh, you haven't. Koi problem hai? Sorry, Hindi. Any problem? Oh, you've raised a Series B. Boss, I have raised a Series F. That's the problem. Valuations, unnecessary funding given to loss-making companies. Fortunately, that is changing, fortunately, because over the last 20 years, so I've been an angel investor and I've lost money, which my wife is very unhappy with. But over time, investors in startups, whether it is VCs or angels, have realized there has to be an end to this madness, number one. Number two, COVID happened, Ukraine war happened, recession in Europe happened, interest rates in the US started going up, money became scarce. So in any case, money was a little more scarce. So now what has happened is, fortunately, the investors are saying, we will not fund you if you're constantly loss-making, but if you are on a path to profitability, even if you're loss-making today, which means your cash burn is coming down quarter on quarter, I am willing to fund you. And I think that's a great thing, because now you will have real companies, you will not have mythical unicorns.
Fantastic. We're going to open this out to Q&A, yeah?
Hello. Yeah. Hi, this is Murli here. It was interesting to hear about the Zerodha and Zoho stories. So, okay. So one clarity, I would like to hear your thoughts on Zerodha and Zoho specifically, because without diluting equity, they have been able to attract talent and grow business. Zoho had a strategy of going to tier 2 towns and other things. Zerodha had a different strategy. But invariably, it's very difficult to visualize that in a startup system when business is just growing, where you cannot pay more at the same, it's something there is too much, a little bit more to understand this. So, over to you.
Okay. So, all these companies were different, by the way. Dream11 raised 8 rounds of funding. Zoho never raised any funding. Zerodha never raised any funding. And InfoEdge, which is Naukri, raised about 3 rounds total, right? So, it's actually quite uncanny. It's very, very different for all these founders. You're right. I'm not saying you shouldn't raise funding. All I'm saying is, and all these founders are saying is, there has to be an end to this madness where you keep making a loss, keep making a bigger and bigger loss, and you keep raising money, and the investor is happy to pump in money. So even at an early stage, see, today we don't expect companies to be profitable at an early stage. We are angel investors, right? But what we will ask them is, your gross margin is that positive? Unit economics is that positive? Because if that is negative, you're in the wrong business. The more you sell, the more you lose, right? So you're right, funding is required, except that it cannot be a substitute for endless loss. I mean, substitute for internal profitability.
Hi. I have a question here. See, when we get these kind of funding in millions and tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, to what extent do the founders lose control over decision making in the company, and to what extent is it then being run by the VC firms and the PE firms? And so, for example, Mr. Byju, Mr. Byju, personally I have a great respect for him. I mean, Mr. Byju Ravindran is a great guy. I mean, he's genuinely a good teacher. But did he kind of lose control? I mean, was he making decisions or were other people making decisions?
I never thought he lost control of the company ever. Everybody in the company knew that. They were talking in hushed tones. But Byju never, ever listened. even today, if you look at the kind of comments that he makes, if you see last year when these people resigned, the board members as well as the auditors, the first reaction was denial. ET broke the story. Economic Times, Vijay Mishra broke the story. Their first reaction was to deny it completely, that it didn't happen. The second response, when they actually proved that they had resigned, was like this was mutually agreed upon. It took reactions from all individuals who had resigned. They had all given their comments publicly for everybody to see exactly what went down, right? And everybody said the same thing. Byju, the company and the board did not listen to them. Even if you, last week, their auditor resigned again, which is MKSA, yes, part of BDO. They resigned exactly for the same reasons that Deloitte had resigned last year. And again, Byju's tone was exactly the same, right? This was predetermined. They asked us to do wrong. We didn't do wrong. I mean, you just have, at this point in time in the story of Byju's, I don't think I can take anything at face value of whatever the founder says. I have to verify it from multiple sources, because he has a tendency of not telling the entire truth. And at no point did he lose control of whatever is happening right now. It might have spiraled. Yeah, it might have gone beyond control. He might have thought that he could control it, and it has gone beyond control. That is true. But at no point he lost control or somebody else like played him from behind. Nothing of that sort happened.
That was fantastically clear. So, sorry, I think there's one more question.
Add something? Yeah, I'll just quickly add. See, you must remember, the investor does not want to run the company, because the investor has already invested in maybe a few hundred companies. There's no way in hell he can run that company.
That's the reason SoftBank is still losing money on WeWork.
So the point is, the investor will get involved only if there is some wrongdoing. For example, if a company does huge unrelated diversification in which the company has no brand, no expertise, the investor will start piling on, right? But otherwise, the investor wants the founder to run the company.
Next question, and Dhruv just told us that the incentive is two older books are going to be given away as prizes to the best two questions.
And Stuthi will decide which question.
You're being in a position of power. Yeah, next question.
Hi. Question to you is, Pradip, you definitely are courageous for whatever you've done.
Thank you.
My question to you, how do you decide your courage, number one, wherein, how do you pick the company? So let's say my question to you next is, can your book be on somebody's, India's, let's say the top 3 richest man, and someone who's covered by not an Indian, but an abroad, someone who's got powerful connection with the government? How do you approach, or would you want to approach such a company? And in case you do, would you be courageous enough to do that?
I already have, I guess. I already have multiple defamation cases against me and the company. So I am fighting all of them.
You know, we were talking about this before the session, and it was, to be honest, a bit of a shocker to me about, this is not potentially what I, as a person from the business world, would think is up for grabs, right? He's been talking about the veiled threats he's been getting, about the defamation suits he's had to face. So the question really is, for me, if there are writers in the room, this kind of investigative, almost forensic business journalism over a long period of time is very different from the everyday, top newspaper in India. What does this take from you? You are also the co-founder of the startup, Morning Context. It's not easy for it's a very David Goliath thing. Can you tell us a little about, what some of those, pressure points, trade-offs have been?
See, look, you will never be able to control what is beyond your control, right? So, for example, anybody, it's a country of 140 crore people, right? Anybody tomorrow can go up to a court and file a defamation case against you. And it could happen over anything, and that court case can go into generations. So you cannot work backwards from that, you know, imagining that it would be a threat to you or whatever. Obviously, it is always constant at the back of your head, because this is economic threat, you know, is one kind of threat. There are other kinds of threats as well. But yeah, I would pursue the stories. To everybody who wants to do this, I think Nitin's session is next. He's somewhere in the room. We will talk about investigative journalism a little bit more. But from what I have seen and what I have done so far is, to the first question, how do I pick my stories? Like, when I started writing about education technology, how do you cover a sector or start covering a sector? You make a list, top 5 companies, start writing about them. That's what I did. I wrote about Byju, I wrote about Unacademy, I wrote about Akash, I wrote about Vedantu. These were the biggest companies at that point in time. And obviously Byju, one thing led to another, and you know, a book came out. Unacademy also I have written multiple stories. So there are, you know, there. Similarly for any other beat that I would cover, you know. But yes, whenever you get into a story, you know that this story can have multiple layers and it can go in various directions. And there could be threats. Like there are sometimes we know for sure that if we write it this way, there will be a legal suit. But do we want to pursue this? If we want to pursue this, we will need to have valid proof that our story stands. And we have changed stories if we didn't have the proof. Just insinuation, just anecdotes, just, you know, corroborations, but no documentary proof. But if you have documentary proof, like if I tomorrow go and say that, you know, the co-founders of this company took out $500 million in secondary share sales, I need to have documentary proof of that thing. Otherwise, it could lead to multiple court cases. So obviously, you have to be very sure about what you're doing. You have to have proof of everything that is controversial. If not,
sorry, can we do this offline, like tea? That'll be great. The organizer is kind of throwing his weight and wants a last question in.
Now that Pradip has become so bold of writing books on difficult topics, will your next book be on Adani?
Or will it be on Amit Shah?
sorry?
Will it be on Amit Shah?
Okay.
I don't write on politics.
On this, you know, short list of names we'd love to see your takedowns on. You know, I'm not a big business
Adani book is
literature
happening.
reader. I'm not a big business reader. I would say buy both books. They are fantastic reads. Dhruv's is like talking to your best friend while you're learning about 4 companies. You know, Pradip's is scary and interesting. Buy both books, and I think who are the 2 prize books going to?
By the way,
Sir, the founder question, did the founder lose control? Fantastic question. We'd all love to believe they lost control.
so these are the earlier ones. One is called Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares. And the other one is The Dream Founder. That's early stage. This is the big guys. And this, by the way, goes to Benedict.
Benedict. Please come and receive your, yeah. One of the books, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, that was a great question. I'm sorry, and we had the question about where do you get your stories from? Do you pick the, you know, ones that you can go after? Do you want to collect your prize?
I only go after clean people.
Thanks both. Buy the books, fantastic books. I would also plug, I've just started reading Morning Context. I think it's fabulously you know, written, fabulously researched. So he didn't ask me to say this. So do sign up. Subscription media is the only way to keep sane in the country. So do that, and thank you both.
Thank you so much. Please do remain on the dais. Let me take this opportunity to invite Benedict onto the dais to present a token of appreciation for our host as well as both our authors. Can we have a huge round of applause for them, please? Can you please pose for a group photograph?